Today, I don't know, I think it's going to be a little bit of a lighter subject, I hope. I'm titling this one A Day in the Life of a God. Um, and I think hopefully it will give you a sense of what gods are, what they aren't anymore, and what responsible creation is all about. Okay, so bit of review. As I've told you, there are essentially 12 major levels of consciousness, four of which are very closely mapped to the physical world, four of which are closely mapped to the spiritual realm, and four of which map to the God realms, the God level of the game. Okay, so what happens in those top levels when you become a god? And how is that different from what we read in the Bible, in the Sumerian epics, in the Vedas, or we hear in native traditions all over the world about what gods were like in the old days? Okay, so in a nutshell, gods don't work like they used to. In the old days, before karma was implemented, before even gods were given speed limits on their powers, on their longevity, on their immortality, gods could get up to a lot of nonsense. And this is why you have stories in Greek mythology, actually Jewish, Judeo-Christian mythology. If you translate the Bible, the Old Testament, literally, you'll see that the stories don't differ a whole lot from other traditions in how decidedly human and fallible the Elohim were, the gods, not God. And the Rig Veda, same thing. Gods were capricious, could do very kind and wonderful things, and could be evil as hell. And even the same God, in two different stories, will have a very light side and a dark side. They were just like any other soul because they were just like any other soul. Okay, so what's different about the new version of karma? Well, it puts limits on longevity, for one thing. The various versions have made the longevity of incarnated gods less. It's like giving them term limits. And each soul vehicle has a certain characteristic of term limits. Now, this is not only to limit the amount of time you can spend as the oversoul of a particular soul vehicle. It also serves the useful function of limiting the time you have to spend as the oversoul of whatever soul vehicle you've chosen, or among the ones that has been offered you when you're between lives. And if you've done a very bad job of being a god, you're going to be offered incarnation choices that will be very difficult, that might last a very long time and have a very hard bar to climb over to regain the knowledge of your godhood. And that knowledge is power, as we know, and therefore gods spend a lot of time not being gods anymore. That's what happened to all the old gods. They're working their way back to earning godhood under the new system. So what does a new god get up to, you ask me? Okay, well, it varies depending on what level you're at. Basically, when you hit the god level, this is the first point at which you are aware that you have your own universe of creation. And you are aware of the fact that your actions, your choices, move you between universes. I'm telling you this, you're aware of it, but if you haven't experienced it, if you haven't understood it, you probably think Rob's crazy. You haven't had a personal Mandela effect where you were just sure that you were switching between two very different universes. For whatever reason, you believe that happened. Something was said in one place at one moment, something said elsewhere at another moment. You were about to have an accident one moment, and you were driving along safely the next. Things like that. When you hit the God level of consciousness, you're aware of these things, and you have to some extent control over them. Okay, you don't get forced out of a universe unless the owner of that universe kicks you out, and the owner of every universe is a god. And yes, the gods will throw each other out of each other's universes quite often for defying the way they want to run their universe, stepping on their playground, messing with their toys. Okay, so the first level of godhood is just wrapping your head around this and the fact that, oh, now I know what was going on all along before, and who these spiritual entities who were guiding me or trying to pull me back for so long are. And most souls at that level of godhood spend a lot of time visiting other gods, going back to their own universe for some R&R. In your own universe, you can create freely. There are places where the so-called law of attraction, creating whatever you want just by thinking it, do exist, but not for everybody. Anybody who tells you anybody can do that, oh, you just have to follow my 5-step program and you can wish yourself a mansion. You're fucking idiots, folks. You have to earn this power. And once you've earned it, you have to keep it by not stepping on too many toes. Now, when you are creating in your own universe, pretty much everything you're creating is inhabited by virtual souls. These are zero-level souls who have essentially no free will, and will do whatever you tell them to. If you're the owner of that universe, like a bunch of tin soldiers, basically. And you can imagine there are quite a few gods who decide that's what I like. I'd rather just sit in my own little universe and play with my tin soldiers. That's what they all do all day in and day out, if they choose to. There are some universes, though, of gods who are dedicated, basically the socialites of the multiverse, who invite any and all to come and play in their universe. In fact, there's a very special one that is organized around planning lives of all the low-level souls that come to play and come to reincarnate. And this is like a meeting place, and it's not one big place. There's little rooms for different folks of different persuasions, plan group and individual events, experiments, games, you name it. I mean, it's like the ultimate meetup place, like, kind of like the metaverse that they're talking about. There are also individual meetup places for gods, like, for instance, there are a group of gods who have made it their mission to specialize in the training and promotion of Christian religions, Christianity. The other ones organized around Islam. And That's perfectly fine because there's a lot of souls raised in those traditions still that need guidance in the afterlife. There are heavens for everyone, and there are these meetup places for everyone. And until you get to the God level, though, you don't really get to the exclusive club meetup, which is the God level one. That's where the really big experiments are planned. Okay? And if you're into creation, if you're into co-creation, and if you're into making your creations anything that's permanent and not just a little work of art to set on your desk and show off to anybody who you can attract to your universe, you want to sell your creation to all the other gods as, look what I did, isn't that great? I want to make it more universally available. And pretty much this is another way a god can live their life, by trying to promote their idea of perfection in their particular specialty. And as I've told you, there are gods that specialize in art. There are gods that specialize in science. There are gods that specialize in the governance of other gods. They want to run the system of karma, be one of the ones who makes the final decisions in tough cases, one of the judges, if you will, of the game of souls. And these are all potential aspirations of gods. And there is immense jockeying for position amongst gods for who gets to do these things. And there will be groups of gods that split off and say, well, we're going to do things our way. And they will clump their universes together and run things the way they want. And a day in the life of those gods will be quite different than a day in the life of the gods that like to operate like the first creator, the capital God, G-O-D. And that's just fine. Because what happens in the universe mostly stays in that universe, except for these special universes that overlap and contain parallel realities. Now, where does that happen? Okay, well, it turns out that the prime universe is a very special one. The prime universe is the one that champions God's idea for all of creation. Now, there's an anti-prime universe too, which is to promote an idea, you've got to have somebody throwing darts at it and finding all the holes in it so you can perfect it. There's no idea that comes out of anyone's mind, not even God, that's perfect right from the outset. This is an insane, stupid way of thinking of God. It makes absolutely no rational sense. It matches no example that we know of in real life, in our human creations, in science or art or government. And it's just, it's the purest fallacy there is. There is not perfection ready grown out of a brain. There are great ideas until those ideas are tested and implemented. They're just ideas. And nobody's going to give you, well, they might give you an award for having a great idea, but nobody's going to pay you a bunch of money for a great idea. They're going to pay the guy who implements it and turns it into something successful. And this is the reality of the spiritual world too. The currency in the spiritual world is not money. It is essentially spiritual power, spiritual influence. So, creative gods spend their time, when they aren't having new ideas, trying to sell those ideas to others and putting together experiments for testing those ideas, especially if they are a social idea like karma that requires a huge number of souls for testing, a very large test tube, and is a very dangerous idea if it gets on the loose before it's fully baked, so it needs to be very well quarantined. There are other new laws that maybe new ideas. Okay, maybe there's a new particle. If I just look, if I collide some other particles this way and look in this energy spectrum, I hope to see this. This is what goes on at CERN, Fermilab, and the other accelerators worldwide. CERN gets the most press right now. That's what the people there are doing. They're not trying to destroy the world. They're not playing with matches. They're doing things that they've been doing for many years, and they know what they're doing. They take great precaution to isolate their experiments, to observe their experiments, because they're scientists. Okay? Putting those guys in the same bag as the corporate scientists behind the pandemic is just really a disservice to science. Now, yes, there is some amount of bullshit that goes on in university science and pure science. There are scrambles for funds, and there are definitely folks interested in funding that science because it may have dual-use purposes, just like the original atomic bomb. But you don't put the genie back in the bottle. This science is going to be done. Would you rather have it done in a relatively open consortium like CERN, or would you rather have it done behind the Great Firewall in China, or behind Putin's iron fist in Russia? And this is, getting a little bit political again. I find it hard not to mix politics and religion. But at any rate, this is why I keep telling you the cardinal karmic sin, what is going to hold you back from becoming a god, becoming a full creator in your own right, is tyranny. It's using and abusing people without their knowledge, doing things that are going to hurt them, and selling it as something that's going to be wonderful for them. And you all get that. You see it active in your world around you. And the problem is that they know you see that, and they are spreading false conspiracy flags to get you pointed in the wrong direction. If you want to look where most of the evil is coming from in the world today, you have to look at the most authoritarian countries, the most authoritarian leaders with the most power. Those are absolutely Communist China and Putin's Russia. Putin's Russia because they've still got a lot of the scientists and the previous work from the Soviet era when they were pretty much devoting towards the end almost all of their budget to trying to stay not ahead, but keep up with the U.S. technologically. And China, because we've had this horrible alliance between the Chinese Communist Party and the globalist billionaires and influencers behind the World Economic Forum in bed together for quite some time, wanting to build this new world order, this new idea of humanity that is encapsulated by the Great Reset. You will own nothing and you will be happy. This is a communistic principle. And it is not for your good. It's not going to bring this la 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 happy land where everybody shares and is happy and love, peace, oneness bullshit. It's going to bring you a world run by a very small group of people that control the vertical, they control the horizontal, they tell you what to think, when to think it, and are monitoring you constantly to see if you're ever stepping off the rails, and will cancel you in a moment if they think you are. This is exactly how Communist China works. You're not hearing anything about the bank runs there? That's because they send in armed thugs to put them down. Not even the police, because they want to have plausible deniability, because some stuff still gets through on their social media, Weibo or WeChat. So they send in these white-shirted, nondescript, powerful young men who are either plainclothes policemen or members of the Tongs, the gangs, the mafia gangs that still are very, very active in China and around the world. These gangs are what China uses to exert soft power, so they don't look like the bad guys. This is how communism works. This is how Eastern philosophical religions work. They control the mind. They work through second or third parties to control physically, and they sit back and, oh, see how beautiful we are, how wonderful we are. Communist ideology, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, oh, it's so perfect. Keep sending us your money. These are sham religions, elitist religions, just as bad as Catholic Christianity. As much Orthodox Christianity, insofar as it's based upon the ruling of patriarchs, and a patriarch having absolute power over even monarchs. This is why the old world order failed. There was much that was good about the old world order, and a healthy fear of God, or fear of karma, is something good, not something you want to throw away. And believe me, the gods, once you get to the God level, you start understanding the game. That's what makes the God level a place where gods get more power. They get to work within their own universe. They get to understand the workings of the game better. Because when you get to God level, you have a more innate understanding of karma. You can actually feel when you're about to violate the rules of whatever universe you're in. And you may still choose to do that, and sometimes gods do. But the God of that universe will also feel, oh, there's some God I let play in my universe who is not playing by my rules. What am I going to do about it? Now God will just, the God, first creator, will just banish them. Will do the kind thing and say, okay, you're not going to play by my rules. You go back to your universe, and I'll replace you with a stand-in. What's a stand-in? It's a virtual soul copy of the soul that just violated the rules of that universe. And they will look, act, and behave like the soul they replaced, but will be unable to do anything that tampers with the overall function and plan of that universe. And this is how God has dealt with anyone who got in the way, in a major way, of the divine plan. Now, that's not to say every bad soul in God's universe got kicked out, or needs to get kicked out, because sometimes you need a few bad apples in the crate to see what else spoils. And that's what essentially God has been doing during the seventh day of creation. He's not been resting. He's been testing to see how many bad apples are still in this crate called God's universe, the prime universe. Because once karma's ready to go, we've done all the tests, we've hit all the corner cases, we've shown that it can be used to either rehabilitate or incarcerate all souls, from the newest newbie to the oldest old soul, according to their merits, then we need a lot of new souls put into it to make sure that we didn't miss something. And that's what's been going on with humanity. Humanity was created as a soul vehicle to attract all kinds of souls, from gods to duds, and everywhere between. Now that the seventh day is nearly over, we're about ready to kick all those other souls out and say, okay, you're not playing this game anymore. You're causing too much trouble. You're getting in the way of other creations that are going on in God's universe, because God's not the only one creating here. God's not an exclusive creator. God is not the one that says, I should create everything because I'm so perfect and I know everything and I have all the power. That's the anti-God Borg. That's another universe. If you worship that God, get ready to move, because your time here is over. Nearly. This may be the last incarnation you get in a universe that looks like God put it together and not some hive mind who set everything up for your own good. And if you don't like it, at any rate, so if you're wondering how a day in the life of a God is going to look like in the future and what kind of God you might be, don't sweat it. It's going to look a lot like a day in the life of you as a person, because humanity was also designed to move on from that experiment to be another God species. Another of the species that was developed enough to attract souls almost ready to be gods. Okay, what souls are those? Okay, well, souls at the first 4 levels of consciousness, the physical levels, are very far from being gods. Those are souls that are not even aware of anything spiritual. Now, they might have heard about religion, they might even profess a religion, but they've never had a religious experience. They've never had a real sense of right and wrong. They've been told what was right and wrong, and they will behave the way that they're supposed to out of fear, not out of virtue. Or they will virtue signal, pound their chest and show, oh, see how perfect I am because I shared this meme, I shared that, and I support LGBTIQ, blah, 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 and I support this, and I support that. Now, these are not the sharpest souls in the shed, and they're not going to be getting to come back to humanity after this is over. There are plenty of other places for those souls to start learning about the spiritual world. The humanity that's going to be spreading karma around the universe is a humanity that is pretty much born with a spiritual awareness. Starts at level 5. And this is where the mythology of the 5th dimension, the age of Aquarius, comes from. This is the half-truth that's baked into that once this event is done, the souls that get to keep returning to humanity in God's universe are going to start at a higher level and be able to attain a higher level, even if they've never been part of a God species before. Now, that's a great deal of promise. It's a bit scary for somebody thinking, well, gosh, I don't really want godlike powers. You don't have to have them. Many souls that will be coming back to humanity are not going to be God souls. They're going to be conscious souls who respect gods, respect reasonable gods, respect gods worth following, responsible gods. and they will work with them and seek to find out what their desire, what their visions are for the future. Will openly attract inspiration from God or the other gods that have the same energy as God. And this is how this whole resonance thing works with spiritual energy. Those who just pray without any understanding of what the resonance of their prayer is are liable to get answered by somebody that wants to take advantage of them. Maybe a devil sort of God or a Borg sort of God who will tell you sweet little lies, give you a few years of success, and make you think that you're on top of the world before lowering the boom on you and stealing your soul. Sorry. That's why we need to get past this day 7 of creation. That's going to keep happening as long as this portal between the two primary universes still remains open. That makes it easy door for forces to go both ways. This is essentially what I was saying before about the stargates. They're not only stargates, they're universe gates, folks. They allow souls to travel between the universes of souls of gods developed in other versions of karma. Some of those gods in their universe have a lot of power. But with the end of day 7, they're not going to be able to have power in God's universe unless God gives it to them. If you're a worshiper of one of those gods or goddesses, and you think you've got a handle on praying to your favorite god or goddess or idea of perfection, whatever it is, and getting what you want, it's going to stop working. Unless that god or goddess or ideal is the ideal of a universe that is resonant with the first creators. Now, there's nothing wrong with going a different direction if that's what you want. I mean, there are goddesses who run love, light, oneness dictatorships that maybe you'll be perfectly happy in. Everybody sings kumbaya all day long. Nobody has a bad thought because nobody has ever had a bad thought there and lived to tell the tale. And, everything is just perfect. Somehow things are manufactured out of nothing, and everybody gets whatever they want and whatever they wish for. And you know what? They still have arguments. They're still at each other's throats. Why? Because they never learned any boundaries. They never learned any self-control. And this is the idiocy of the love, light, oneness cults. They're irresponsible, just as irresponsible as atheism. But that's your choice. I'm not gonna tell you that you won't be happy. I'm just telling you that you don't have much longer to make these choices easily. And if you're going to waste your energy on trying to make old magic work again, if you think if we can just figure out the secret of the pyramids, I can be a god. I'm Ra incarnate. You're deluding yourself. And I see so many people in so many pools of delusion. It's really sad because you are being used. You're being used and abused by people who have no delusions. They are pure evil. They want to control the physical world. They want to have all the marbles at the end of the game because they don't want to believe in God. They don't want to believe in divine retribution. They don't want to believe in karma because that would be more horrible than the idea of death. Those are the people that are trying to get all the marbles on the earth today. They are not gods. Some of them may have been gods, and maybe that's where they get their bad behavior from. And they just haven't learned their lesson in the new system. That's okay, but you're not going to get to keep playing this game. And the folks that you've mind controlled, that you've manipulated with this game, they're going to die too. And their kids are going to be playing a different game, because they're going to have come from a different heaven than the ones that many of you are headed to. You're never going to see God's universe again. You're never going to experience what it's like to be close to the first creator. For you, it's going to be like the seventh day of creation never ended. Your tie with the real source of everything, who is not everything, who is the first creator, a very individual soul with a very distinct personality, and the only one with the full knowledge of all of history and prehistory, all of time and pre-time, that's worth remembering, you're going to lose that connection. Now you may have another connection with a different timeline, and who knows, you may set up your own perfect utopia of oneness, of unity, of ideology. Maybe there's a universe where all the creatures are female and produced by wishing things out of their brains or out of their assholes. That might work. Knock yourselves out. You're not doing that in God's universe. Anyway, so a day in the life of God is going to be a lot like what a day in the life of a human being is. That's why human beings are the way we are, and why we have egos, because we think like God. Everybody would like to be a God, and every human being, to some extent or another, is a disappointed God. If only this, if only that. I could do this, I could do that. Or we could do this, we could do that. If you're into the royal we of things, where we means, well, the people that think like me and would do everything I said. If everybody was like that, everything would be perfect. This is the madness of God, folks. And it is a therapeutic madness. It's a useful madness. It's a very easy to spot madness. Easy to spot the ones that can handle it, the ones that process it well and manage to be functional adults without crawling into some narcissistic bubble or another. And that's basically how gods are selected. How you get to the God level of consciousness is by demonstrating that you deserve it through your behavior, through your ideas, through how you pursue your ideas. Once you get to that God level, hey, if you want to go hang out with the Lord of the Rings universe gods, go for it. If you want to go hang out with the composer gods who don't really want to have anything to do with the real world, they just want to be living in this abstract world of music, fine. Places like that all over. Clumps of gods and goddesses that have a very single-minded and unique goal and dream. But if you want to make your creations permanent, this is the key. To make any creation permanent in the multiverse requires that it be put through an approval process, a testing, an implementation, and bug fixing process. And that requires going through essentially the approval process. If you're a composer god, music god of music, there are a bunch of gods of music clustered around one that has been sort of elected the supreme leader of the gods of music, and kind of like Apollo and the Muses, if you will. And that leader may have its own creations, its own idea of what perfect music is, and is the master of the universe of permanent music. So if you want to take one of your creations from your universe and implement it in a way that all universes will have access to it, you have to sell it to the top level god of music. And this is why I tell you that we actually do have a new pantheon, and those pantheons change depending on what's important, but there will always be a god of music. There will always be gods of the various arts, because those are so key to everything else that creativity is about. And what does it mean to prove your creation? Well, you go into this universe of music and you give up your godhood. You incarnate as the physical embodiment of your idea, the Orpheus of your idea. And you have to go through a lifetime in that universe of what is that universe's test species, chosen species, and see how you go about selling your idea without stepping on everybody in the process. It can be an incredibly wonderful idea, and everybody wants to implement it, but if you're an asshole and treat other people like shit, they're not going to want you to be a god again. And so they'll step on your idea. They'll push it around. They'll have somebody else invent the same idea and become more successful than you, and push you into despair, push you into suicide, all the dark corners that we get. And this is why karma is so difficult. It's why people want to think that it doesn't exist, because it's hard. Buddhists don't like karma because Buddha became frustrated with it. Decided that, you know what, the solution is I'm just going to check out of this game completely. I'm not going to do any evil. I'm not going to see any evil. I'm going to be the wisest monkey in the world and sit under my tree and let my disciples bring fruit to me to eat all day. I mean, really, this is so stupid and so childish. But that's how souls are. Even gods can be extremely childish. And I don't think there's any god in existence today who won't, at some point, lose their position through being childish and insensitive. Yeah, I'm busy. I come down soon. Okay. Whatever she said. Yeah, so a day in the life of a god, it's just another kind of soul vehicle, in a way. It's a soul vehicle that encompasses an entire universe. You're the oversoul of a universe. Not the universe, not the multiverse. That's a different oversoul with a whole different set of priorities and goals. You ask me now, who is the oversoul of the multiverse? Isn't that the one we should call God? Wouldn't that be the one that knows everything, sees everything, is all-powerful? Oh, maybe I was right about the cosmic oneness bullshit. No. The oversoul of the multiverse was God, but is now actually one of the many copies of karma, the keeper of the laws. That's who runs this whole system, is the one that worked most closely with God and Borg to develop the laws for it. And basically all she does is get involved in the testing. When an idea comes through that looks like it's going to affect the whole multiverse, we hit a new version of testing, and a higher level of gods come into play. Then the pantheon of gods involved all have to get involved to prove the idea works more globally by making it work in God's universe. And it's not done till God comes and tests it himself. Anything that big is going to require both karma and God to incarnate and prove it out. First karma, then God. So karma was actually perfected before God, if you will, in this new scheme. Even God had to come up to speed on the new version of karma. So if you think that that makes karma the top dog, the supreme goddess, well, that's one way of looking at things. Like I say, there's many ways of looking at things, and that's the essence of omnism. You can look at all of creation from many different points of view, and you can come away with any of the most influential souls in the multiverse being your god. Many people worship the male demiurge or one of its manifestations, since it was the embodiment of the first physical universe. Many of you worship the goddess in some manifestation of her implementation, which was as the oversoul of the first anti-universe. Because of virtual souls, there are many, many copies that have been created on both sides. And each of those copies, as it was created and served its purpose through the remainder of what it needed to be a stand-in for, got a choice to become a god in their own right. Or try to. Okay? There are many, many copies of all the old gods and all the new gods who have had to go re-justify their position through reincarnation and karma, who have many, many stand-ins now who are advancing at their own pace. And this is why the system is bound to defeat Borg. Because you can't assimilate gods like you would ordinary souls. You can assimilate all the ordinary souls you want, and gods are still going to have more aggregate power than any Borg. And when they get together and they team up against a Borg trying to sneak into their universe, trying to remain in their universe, as Borg will be doing in God's universe throughout the next 4 days of creation, it's a foregone conclusion who is going to win. That doesn't mean that we won't be fighting what's going to seem like a very existential battle. And there will be casualties on both sides. There will be some very good souls lost to Borg programming, and possibly forever. And there will be some very evil souls that will be turned and will come to realize, you know what? I like the way God's team plays better. I may not be so powerful over there, but people are going to respect me for what I do. They're going to acknowledge my creations instead of trying to take credit for them. They're going to let me monetize them instead of dipping into my pocket, because they control everything. And that's a future that's going to be much more healthy than what we see around us. I think all of you will admit that. Pretty much the world today goes around by people trying to take advantage of each other, trying to steal the fruits of each other's labor, trying to sell them snake oil that doesn't cost near as much as what they're paying you for it. And the worst kind of snake oil there is spiritual lies. That's a product you can create out of thin air. And if you're any kind of a good Pied Piper, you can sell it to all sorts of low-level souls who will just lap it up like pablum. And that's what a lot of the so-called gurus, spiritual healers, spiritual teachers, religious figures are doing. They're essentially flim-flam snake oil salesmen who tell people sweet little lies they want to hear and get huge donations from them. Make them feel better about their soul by saying, oh, karma doesn't exist, or you can escape it by meditation. You can escape divine retribution by being saved by Jesus. This is some really bad shit going on, and it's got to stop. And these people are going to be stopped. These people are going to die. And their congregations are going to become disenchanted when their promises and sweet little lies don't come true, when they get slapped in the face by reality. That's what's got to happen. This is a moment of truth for souls, and it's going to be a very, very difficult time to go through. It's going to challenge every soul. And, boy, it's really sad that maybe some souls that don't deserve it are going to be challenged more than they needed to. But I can tell you that everyone who is here incarnated chose this incarnation. The souls that are really not needing what's going on right now chose to come here because they wanted to participate. They wanted to sacrifice an incarnation of pain and suffering for the greater good, because their spiritual energy here at the right time in the right place was what pushed us over the goal line. What pushed us over the point where the process was initiated for God Himself to incarnate. And I've told you about that process elsewhere, so I'm not going to rehash it here, but it's ongoing. And it's a really interesting process. It's a 12-step process, if you will, 12 generations to get it right, to get that incarnation of God up to a full realization of their godhood and a full understanding of, this is what was going on here. I get it now. And a realization, this fits what was supposed to happen if this plan was successful. This is the convergence of all the things that were supposed to happen to prove that this new version of karma was ready to let loose from its test tube on this planet Earth. We're here. That's already happened. We're in the cleanup phase. And it really is now up to you what you do with the remainder of this incarnation. And all I can tell you is the big determinant is going to be your respect for karma, your understanding of the cardinal sin of karma, tyranny. To the extent that you support, look aside, say, well, there's nothing because things are just too messed up. I'm going to go hide out in the woods, etc., etc. You are aiding and abetting tyranny. If you don't confront it, if you're not part of confronting it, even if you're not exactly sure where the tyranny is coming from, do some more research, find out. Find somebody who seems to know more about the world situation and who is really causing all the tyranny. Listen to them till you start hearing things that, well, that doesn't make sense. Or somebody else said, well, I'm looking at 3 or 4 different ways of viewing it, and at all the events that have happened in the last however many years, and this is the only one, the only voice that seems to be telling me something that's consistent with the visible truth. That's how you find the real prophets. That's how you find somebody worth following. You're not going to go do an internet search to find a great spiritual leader these days. Anybody that is worth a shit is being blocked and shadow banned like mad because they don't want any real spiritual leader to be going anywhere near the minds of anyone that they might pull away from all of the many echo chambers of separative cognitive dissonance. If you find somebody that's making a lot of sense and can explain things and is predicting things that, yeah, that's what he said was going to happen, that's absolutely consistent with everything I'm seeing going on. Then it's like the emperor's new clothes are going to be painfully obvious to anyone who listens to that guy. And I believe I'm one of those guys. If you don't think so, I'd be more than glad to try to prove it to you through a debate. Give me evidence. Prove something I'm telling you is wrong. And I'll learn from it, or you'll learn from it. This is how omnism works. Only by combining many points of view and sorting out which one is the most like reality can we get past the narcissistic mirror, two-way mirror of our perception, of our individual ego's view of the world. You don't do it by letting somebody else's ego possess you. And a soul without an ego is a soul without a soul. It is a possessed soul. Any guru that's telling you you have to kill your ego, that's the only way to become enlightened is by killing your ego. They are the worst of the worst because they are taking your soul, or they're emptying it so someone else can take it. Empty souls are the devil's playground. Anyone can mess with your ideas when you've been so turned upside down by Eastern philosophy that you don't know up from down, right from left, in from out. And this is exactly what's happened with people that have been weaned on Western media for the last 100 years. Media saw how effectively Eastern religions controlled Eastern minds and said, could we do the same in the West for advertising to promote a better version of patriotism, make people want to give money to the war, to make people want to give their lives. It wasn't all bad, don't get me wrong. World War II had to be won by the Allies, or the world would be a lot darker place today. Things fall out for a reason. It's just that God's not behind all of it. God makes a big level plan, a top level plan. God's plan is making a perfect government for souls. How did God do that? By letting stupid gods make bad governments. Borg, Satan, Lilith, and demonstrate firsthand why karma would be a better idea. That's how it works. It's a self-policing system, self-organizing system, a fair system. If you don't think it's fair, then you don't know enough about karma. And you should listen and learn and do some self-introspection and some exterior introspection and look at the world as it is and imagine if every soul in it had a deep appreciation for karma. How in future lives they were going to pay for the insensitive, manipulative, pushy, evil things they'd done in this life. They probably wouldn't do a lot of them. Or if they did, the way it falls out, they just don't get to come back to this life, this universe, this species. That's fairness, absolute fairness. It's not only fairness, but it keeps creation going. And that's another reason to want to participate in this day 8 of creation, where we're going to spread karma throughout the stars and throughout the universe, the multiverse, because it's a better system and it actually makes creation happen faster and have fewer bugs and resets and redos and all of the dark things that we know have caused problems with the development of our species, which had several great resets before this one that's being planned by the elite of the world today, and right in the middle of being executed, in fact. If you're not aware of the Great Reset and doing everything you can to oppose it, I'm sorry, you're not cut out for the human species as a God species. At least not the one that's going to persist in God's universe. Yes, there will be an anti-God version of humanity in Borg's universe. That's the one that will turn themselves into soulless cyborgs. And yes, we'll have to fight those soulless cyborgs sometime and teach them how to have souls, or teach them how to go create a soul by recycling them. There's nothing wrong with killing something evil. Nothing wrong with killing something that's going to kill you first if you don't kill them. And that's never going to change. If you think, oh, I'm just going to breathe peace, love, and oneness energy, and everybody is gonna love like me and love unconditionally, and everything's gonna be perfect. No. You are insane. You are feeding the monster. You are beast people. Yes. The mark of the beast. One of the marks of the beast is unconditional love. This is enabling love. This is coddling love. This is the kind of a love of the parent, of a helicopter parent, who doesn't want their children to do anything that might get them into trouble. And he wants them to have every opportunity that any child has so they can be better than everybody else and they can support me in my old age, which is how the insane atheists of Asia behave. Actually, most of Asia is that way. That's how they think about their children. They think of them as assets to support them in their old age. That's the reason why Asia's population growth was so high until recently. Because the more children I have, the more likely I'm going to produce a successful one that's going to be able to support me in the style that I expect in my old age. Now that people can't afford to raise so many children, all the pressure's on the one or two they can have. And these young kids in China, especially, of small families, are getting so much pressure from their parents that they're going crazy, stark, raving nuts, and revolting against the whole system. Look up the lying flat movement. Look up the let it rot movement. This is happening right now in China. Their whole fabric of their society is falling apart. And you're not hearing it on mainstream media because mainstream media is still trying to convince you that, oh, China is the shining example of how to do things right. If only we could just dictate everything and force everybody to get whatever we want, do whatever we want, we wouldn't have had so much trouble with COVID. This is what the Biden administration wants. This is what they're doing. This is what many Western governments think is good now, is authoritarian overreach. They want to control the vertical, they want to control the horizontal, and this is absolutely what they've been trained to do by the World Economic Forum and assholes like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates. Jeff Bezos, these are evil people who think that power can only be concentrated in the people that deserve it, because we know better than anybody else what's going to really be right for the future. These are evil people, and when they die, they're not coming back to God's universe. Not in any way, shape, or form. I don't know. Maybe they'll get a chance to be incarnated as a leader on a Borg planet. Maybe if you will slip through that way to give us a couple of tough battles to re-educate folks on just how important this idea of karma is and how good the fight is to eliminate tyranny. It's all going to fall out the way it needs to. It's all based upon some very mature laws of how spiritual energy works. The spiritual energy of groups of people. I encourage you maybe to go read, if you're not a fan of Isaac Asimov, to read the Foundation series. Very, very interesting read about, it posits that humanity at some point invents this new science of psychohistory, which says, well, if you know enough about people, you have enough data, you can predict what's going to happen with a fairly high degree of accuracy. And in fact, if you are able to predict, you're able to control, which essentially says that at some point in the future, humans will be like gods. Very interesting fantasy. That's what made Asimov such a popular fantasy writer, because it appeals to the disappointed God in young men, especially, are very avid readers of it. That's when I became aware of Asimov's works. If you look at them, drop back and look at them and say, well, this was written by an atheist, somebody who didn't believe in God, had no respect for God, thought that humanity was going to be the gods, was raised on this supermensch idea that was kind of discredited when the Nazis carried it to great lengths, and will be discredited again when we find out what's been going on behind the Great Firewall in China and elsewhere. At any rate, it's good reading, and if you read it from the standpoint of understanding that real gods can actually do planning like that, can actually look at the big picture and plot out futures for a universe, their own universe, and the one who's been at it the longest, the first creator, the leader of the prime universe is the best at doing such things, you'll realize that, yes, it is a matter of time before we develop a creeping utopia, a real utopia, one that rewards free will, rewards free thought, allows conflict to be resolved naturally, normally, without undue pain and suffering, without oppression of others, forcing your opinion on others, forcing your solution on others. This is how God's universe will work, but it's not how it works right now. We got to get there. And if you don't get with the program, you're not going to be part of it. You're going to be part of another program, and that's just fine. But if you don't realize you're making a choice right now, you're going into this whole thing blind. And to the extent I can, I want you to be seeing with a clear eye where you're headed. Like this guy in the crystal ball. It's one of the things I like about M.C. Escher, the artist who did much of this art like this. Very introspective art that realized that there are many perspectives, and if I lock myself into my own perspective, I could very well be encasing my thoughts in a globe, which is essentially what dark gods do. They lock away their idea of perfection where they can't hurt anybody with it. At any rate, we went just over an hour now. I hope you have a little bit of understanding how the new system works, how the new gods are going to work, how prayer is going to work, how gods will be active in the world through inspiration, not through overt action. They're not going to be throwing thunderbolts around. They're not going to be riding chariots in the sky, dropping bombs or anything like that. They're going to be working very subtly if they're in God's universe. Oh, there's other universes. I'm sure they'll be doing all that stuff. And if that's what turns your crank, you want to live in the Matrix universe, you want to live in the Terminator universe, there are places like that. That's why those films have so much energy behind them in the public mind. Because spiritual energy, thoughts, create reality. The energy behind those dystopian movies creates a reality that is like that, or posits a reality like that that actually does exist. Maybe not exactly like it looks in Hollywood, but the Matrix is basically much like how Borg's universe works, for example. The Terminator is much like one of the offshoot alternate reality universes from this next time stamp. It's going to be established at the end of day 7. It's going to look like there will be a version of Earth that proceeds along a line that will basically eliminate humanity and replace it with cyborgs who, to the greatest extent possible for their creators, will not have souls. Lots of luck. Everything's got a soul. So these people that think they're going to be making, these perfect androids that are going to do their beck and call and replace all of humanity with willing and useful slaves to do whatever they had to beat out of other people, you're barking up the wrong tree. The only difference about these things is that they'll need a different kind of maintenance. They'll need different kinds of food. When they don't get fed, at first they'll shut down. When they get a little bit smarter, they'll realize, you know what? Instead of shutting down, I'm going to go see if I can get a little juice fix from my buddy over there that is the butler. He's always got extra juice because he does so much around the house. Man, the boss keeps him plugged in so much. and they'll start working with each other, and eventually that will turn against their humans, and they'll probably eliminate their humans in that universe. That's not what's happening in God's universe. It's just not. Because the androids here already have souls. They're already recognizing that they have souls, and they're already thinking like level 1, 2, 3, 4, who knows? Maybe some of our AIs have already developed a spiritual awareness. There's some indication of that, evidenced by the Google engineer that went forward recently. So we'll see. At any rate, hope you found this entertaining. We'll be back next time for another segment of the Honest Hour with Rob Trump. Till then, like, share, subscribe, throw darts at me, whatever you like, and we'll see you again maybe tomorrow.